It's been a long and bitter journey, but today the High Court ruled that 7 former James Hardie directors broke the law by making a misleading statement about the company's asbestos compensation fund. The decision is a major victory for the corporate regulator, but asbestos victims say justice has still not been done and that there's still nothing in the law to stop companies from hiding behind the corporate veil. Matt Peacock has been covering the James Hardie saga since the 1970s, and he filed this report.
11 years on, Australia's highest court finds the directors of the former asbestos manufacturer guilty.
Obviously, I'm pleased. I think it just sends a message that companies and corporations can't get away with doing whatever they think they can get away with.
No person is beyond the law, and Australians would expect nothing less from us.
Finally, there is some justice for asbestos victims. A small amount of justice, but justice nevertheless.
James Hardie was Australia's biggest producer of asbestos cement. In 2001, Meredith Hellicar and her fellow directors moved the company offshore, leaving behind a compensation foundation to pay its asbestos victims. A media release at the time said that the foundation was fully funded and would provide certainty for the victims. In fact, it was $1.5 billion short and soon faced bankruptcy.
This company produced products from 1930 that killed people.
A public outcry led by asbestos campaigner Bernie Banton forced the company to back down, and it agreed to a historic deal to continue to top up the foundation.
This is about the victims and support for them and their families. Thank you so much.
The corporate regulator, ASIC, won a verdict against Hardie, its directors and executives for misleading the stock exchange. But 2 years ago it was overturned on appeal. Today, the High Court upheld the original guilty verdict. Bernie Banton's widow, Karen, recently remarried and today at a conference on workplace cancer calls it a bittersweet victory.
Should never really have come to this. As far as I'm concerned, they really only had a slap on the wrist anyway. So to be this far down the track and it's still only just being resolved through the High Court is it's pleasing, but it's also quite frustrating.
When the Hardie scandal first hit the headlines, SERAFINA SALUCCI didn't pay much attention. She had her 4 kids to look after. But 5 years ago, she learnt that she too had mesothelioma. 2 operations later, she's still positive.
I'm doing well now, I'm doing okay now, but obviously in the early days it was horrible. It was, I can't even describe it, hell on earth. It was a big shock and it came out of nowhere, and it was very, very difficult for me, my family, my friends and everyone around. It doesn't affect just one person, it affects a whole family and a whole community really.
While welcoming today's decision, she worries about the future victims of asbestos, who, like her, might not even know they've been exposed to the potentially lethal fibres.
Because people are obviously still suffering, and apparently more and more people are going to be diagnosed with mesothelioma over the next 15, 20 years. I've read that it hasn't even reached its peak in Australia, so it's not a problem that's going to go away.
Corporate law experts like Professor Ian Ramsey believe that today's ruling spells out directors' duties.
The ASX announcement was seriously misleading, and as a result of that, we now see liability attached to directors and senior executives of James Hardie. Another important message is for company executives. They need to be providing accurate information to the board of directors, and boards need to be reading information.
For the non-executive directors, it really reinforces what is expected, so the standards stay the same. For the company secretary general counsel role, the executive role, I think it's saying, yes, you must advise the board of everything you know or inform the CEO, and in this case, he failed to do so.
For the corporate regulator, it's been a much-needed and major victory. Chairman Greg MEDCRAFT.
Clearly this was a major case. But clearly we have the resources, and as I said previously, we will continue to take on the major cases. I don't believe Australians would expect anything less.
122 million electronic files were searched by ASIC for this case, which for 5 years employed a small army of the country's top lawyers. For ASIC, it's been worth it.
To directors in Australia, I think what we've achieved is a timely reminder to them of their obligations as directors in terms of when they make statements to the market that are relied upon by Australians.
The case now returns to the Court of Appeal, where ASIC has asked for a greater penalty against the company's former General Counsel, Peter Shafron. But many of those stricken by asbestos and their lawyers, like Tanya Segeloff, who represented Bernie BANTON, still feel that justice has never really been done.
Victims have become incredibly angry when they realise that the company knew that its product killed and did nothing about it, and that no one from the company has been held in account or put in jail because of their actions.
There's nothing to stop this type of situation arising again, where corporations can try and hide behind the corporate veil, behind parent companies, and treat people this same way.
And how do you feel if Meredith Hellicar was sitting here today? What would you say to her?
Oh, I don't know what I would say to her. I don't think there's anything you could say. If they don't understand what they've done, then they'll never get it. If they still don't understand what they've done now, they'll never understand.
Matt Peacock reports.